Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
The morning I met Mia, I was kneeling beside Luna, our resident manatee, running my fingers along the jagged scar that traced her left flank like a roadmap of pain. The Florida sun filtered through the mangroves, casting dancing shadows across the treatment pool, and I found myself whispering the same words I'd been saying for months. You're going to be okay, girl. We're going to make you whole again. I didn't hear her approach Dr. Mia Salazar, moved with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged wherever she stood. When she spoke, her voice carried the warmth of honey and the certainty of someone who'd spent years putting broken things back together. You're good with your hands. I turned, and there she was, early 30s, sun-streaked hair escaping from a messy bun, stethoscope draped around her neck like a badge of honor. She held out a bucket of fish, and when our fingers brushed during the exchange, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a spark that didn't make me want to run. I'm Mia, she said, her smile easy and genuine. The new marine veterinarian. And you must be Natalie. I've heard about the miracle worker who can calm any creature with just a touch. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I don't know about miracles. I just ... I listen to what they need. That's rarer than you think. She crouched beside me, her professional gaze assessing Luna's condition. This scarring pattern suggests a boat propeller injury. When did she come in? 6 months ago. A fishing charter found her floating near the quays, barely conscious. I watched as Mia's hands moved expertly over Luna's body, checking for signs of infection or distress. The previous vet said she might never fully recover. The previous vet was wrong. Mia's voice carried absolute certainty. She's healing beautifully, but healing isn't just about the body, it's about trust. And she trusts you completely. Something in her tone made me look up sharply. Our eyes met, and I saw recognition there. Kind that passes between people who understand what it means to heal from wounds that don't always show on the surface. Over the following weeks, Mia became a constant presence at the sanctuary. She taught me how to administer pain medication with precision, how to read the subtle signs of distress in marine mammals, how to calculate dosages based on weight and species. In return, I showed her the pressure points that could calm an anxious manatee, the way to approach a frightened sea turtle, the importance of moving slowly and speaking softly. You have a gift, she told me one afternoon as we watched Luna glide through the treatment pool with increasing confidence. You see past the injury to the animal spirit. That's not something you can teach in veterinary school. My grandmother always said that healing comes from the heart first, then the hands, I replied, surprised by my own openness. I rarely talked about Grandma Eleanor, especially not about the letters I'd found in her attic after she passed. Your grandmother sounds wise. Is she still? She died 2 years ago. Left me this old house and a trunk full of love letters. I laughed, but it came out shaky. Turns out she had quite the secret romance in her youth. Mia's eyes softened. Love letters have a way of outliving everything else, don't they? They're like time capsules of the heart. That evening, after the last volunteer had gone home and the sanctuary settled into its peaceful night rhythm, I found myself unable to sleep. The Florida heat clung to everything, and my small apartment above the clinic felt stifling. I wandered down to the treatment area, where the gentle sound of water pumps and the occasional splash of a manatee provided a soothing backdrop. I was surprised to find Mia there, sitting on the edge of Luna's pool, her bare feet dangling in the water. She'd changed out of her scrubs into a simple sundress, and her hair fell loose around her shoulders. Couldn't sleep either? She asked without turning around. The heat, I lied, settling beside her. The truth was more complicated. I'd been thinking about her words, about healing and hearts, and the way she looked at me like I was something precious rather than broken. I have insomnia, she said matter-of-factly. Started during my residency and never really went away. I've learned that fighting it just makes it worse, so I try to find productive ways to spend the quiet hours. Like sitting with manatees, like getting to know the people who dedicate their lives to saving them. She turned to face me, and in the soft glow of the pool lights, she looked almost ethereal. Tell me about those letters, Natalie. What kind of secret romance did your grandmother have? I hesitated. I'd never told anyone about Eleanor's letters, about the hidden love affair that had shaped her entire life. But something about Mia's gentle interest, her non-judgmental curiosity, made me want to share. She was in love with another woman, I said quietly. Back in the 1950s, when that kind of love was dangerous. They wrote to each other for decades, even after Eleanor married my grandfather. That must have been incredibly difficult for her. I think it broke her heart, keeping that secret. But it also kept her alive in a way, having something that was entirely her own, even if she couldn't live it openly. Mia was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. And you? Have you ever felt that kind of love? The question hung between us like a challenge. I thought about Thomas, about the marriage that had felt more like a prison than a partnership, about the way I'd lost myself trying to become someone else's idea of perfect. I thought I did, I said carefully, that I'm starting to think I confuse love with survival. They're not the same thing, Mia said softly. Love shouldn't require you to disappear. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Luna drift peacefully through the water. The manatee seemed to sense our presence, occasionally surfacing near our feet with gentle curiosity. She's going to be ready for release soon, I said, changing the subject before it could venture into territory I wasn't ready to explore. Yes, but I think she's going to miss you. You've been her constant companion through the hardest part of her recovery. That's the goal, though, to help them heal so they can go back to where they belong. And what about you, Natalie? Where do you belong? The question caught me off guard. I'd spent so many years trying to fit into spaces that weren't meant for me, trying to become someone I wasn't, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to simply exist without apology. I don't know, I admitted. I'm still figuring that out. Mia reached over and took my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. Well, for what it's worth, I think you belong exactly where you are. The sanctuary needs you. The animals need you. She paused, her thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. And I need you too. The confession hung between us, vulnerable and honest. I felt my heart racing, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous hope. Mia ... You don't have to say anything, she said quickly. I just wanted you to know that you're not alone in this. Whatever you're healing from, whatever you're trying to figure out, you don't have to do it by yourself. That night, I dreamed of Eleanor's letters, of love that had to hide in shadows and stolen moments. I woke with a profound sense of sadness for my grandmother, but also with a growing understanding that her story didn't have to be mine. The rainy season came early that year, bringing with it a series of storms that kept us busy at the sanctuary. Injured animals arrived, almost daily: sea turtles with damaged shells, pelicans with broken wings, dolphins disoriented by the changing tides. Mia threw herself into the work with an intensity that was both admirable and concerning. You need to rest, I told her one evening as she finished suturing a gash on a young dolphin's dorsal fin. You've been here for 16 hours straight. I'm fine, she said, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the slight tremor, and her hands that spoke of too much caffeine and too little sleep. When was the last time you ate a real meal? She paused, considering. I had a protein bar this morning. Or maybe yesterday morning. The days are starting to blur together. That's not eating, that's surviving. I took the surgical instruments from her hands, noting how she didn't resist. Come on, I'm making you dinner. Natalie, you don't have to. I want to. The words came out more forcefully than I intended. I want to take care of you. Something shifted in her expression, a softening that made my chest tight with possibility. Okay, she said quietly. I'd like that. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and books and the kind of comfortable clutter that comes from actually living in a space, rather than just existing in it. I'd inherited most of the furniture from Eleanor, and the walls were covered with her botanical drawings, intricate sketches of Florida's native plants that she'd done in her spare time. Your grandmother was an artist, Mia observed, studying a particularly detailed drawing of a sea grape tree. Among other things, she was a teacher, a botanist, a secret keeper. I pulled ingredients from the refrigerator, grateful to have something to do with my hands. She taught me that everything has a story if you know how to look for it. What story do you see when you look at me? The question stopped me cold. I turned to find Mia leaning against the kitchen counter, her expression open and curious. She'd changed into one of my t-shirts. I'd insisted after noticing the bloodstains on her scrubs, and she looked younger somehow, more vulnerable. I see someone who's running from something, I said honestly. Someone who throws herself into work because it's easier than facing whatever she's trying to escape. Mia's smile was rueful. You're not wrong. I left my last position under difficult circumstances, personal and professional complications that I'd rather not repeat. What happened? She was quiet for a long moment, considering how much to reveal. I fell in love with someone I shouldn't have. Another doctor, someone who wasn't free to love me back. When the relationship ended, it made continuing to work there impossible. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me what I don't want love that has to hide, relationships that require secrecy and shame. She looked at me intently. What about you? What story do you see when you look at yourself? I turned back to the stove, needing the distraction of cooking to ground me. I see someone who's learning to recognize the difference between love and control. Someone who's trying to figure out what she wants instead of what she thinks she should want. And what do you want, Natalie? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and danger. I thought about my marriage to Thomas, about the way he'd systematically isolated me from friends and family, about the subtle ways he'd made me question my own reality. I thought about the sanctuary, about the animals who trusted me to heal them, about the way Mia looked at me like I was capable of miracles. I want to stop being afraid, I said finally. I want to stop waiting for permission to exist. You never needed permission, Mia said softly. You just needed to remember that you're allowed to take up space in your own life. We ate in comfortable silence, the sound of rain on the roof providing a gentle soundtrack to our meal. Afterward, as we cleaned up together, I found myself hyper-aware of every accidental touch, her hand brushing mine as she passed me a dish, the way she moved around. My kitchen like she belonged there. I should probably head home, she said as we finished, but there was no conviction in her voice. You could stay, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I mean, the storm is getting worse, and you're exhausted, and I have a perfectly good couch, ... Is that what you want? For me to sleep on your couch? The question was a challenge, gentle but unmistakable. I felt my cheeks burn, but I held her gaze. No, I said quietly, that's not what I want. She moved closer, her hand coming up to cup my cheek. Then tell me what you do want. I want you to stay. I want to fall asleep listening to your breathing. I want to wake up and know that this, whatever this is, isn't just a dream. And what if I told you that I've been thinking about you every night for weeks? That I've been finding excuses to stay late at the sanctuary just to spend more time with you? My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd say that we've both been dancing around something that feels too big to name. Maybe it's time we stopped dancing. She leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, to change my mind, to retreat back into the safe space of friendship and professional collaboration. Instead, I met her halfway, my lips finding hers in a kiss that was gentle and questioning and utterly transformative. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against hers, trying to catch my breath. I've never. I started, then stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. Never what? Never been with a woman, never felt like this. Never wanted. Something so much that it scared me. Mia's smile was radiant. There's no rush, Natalie. We have all the time in the world. But as it turned out, we didn't have all the time in the world. We had exactly 3 more weeks of stolen moments and growing intimacy before my past came crashing back into my present with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. Thomas found us on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was in the treatment pool with Luna, preparing her for her final health assessment before release, when I heard Mia's voice from the reception area, a sharp, professional, cautious. I'm sorry, but we don't allow unauthorized personnel in the treatment areas. If you're interested in volunteering, I can give you an information packet. I'm not here to volunteer. Thomas's voice was exactly as I remembered it, smooth, confident, with an underlying edge that suggested barely contained anger. I'm here to see my wife. My blood turned to ice. Luna, sensing my distress, moved closer, her massive body offering what comfort she could. I climbed out of the pool on unsteady legs, grabbing a towel as I tried to prepare myself for a confrontation I'd been dreading for months. Ex-wife, I called out as I entered the reception area, pleased that my voice came out steady despite the way my hands were shaking. We've been divorced for over a year, Thomas. What are you doing here? He looked exactly the same, tall, professionally dressed, with the kind of smile that had once made me feel special, but now made my skin crawl. Natalie, sweetheart, you look different. I look happy, I said, acutely aware of Mia standing behind the reception desk, her body coiled with tension. Something you never seemed particularly interested in. I've been worried about you. Living alone, running this place without proper supervision. I heard you hired a new veterinarian. His gaze shifted to Mia, and I saw the moment he cataloged her appearance. Her proximity to me, the way she was watching him with barely concealed hostility. Dr. Salazar, isn't it? I did some research on your credentials. Impressive resume. Though I was surprised to learn about your sudden departure from your previous position. My employment history is none of your business, Mia said coolly, and neither is Natalie's personal life. Natalie's personal life has always been my business. We were married for 5 years. I know her better than anyone. He turned back. To me, his expression softening into what I recognized as his manipulation mask. I've been thinking about our conversation before you left. About counseling, about giving our marriage another chance. There's nothing to give another chance. Too, I said firmly, our marriage is over. It's been over for a long time. Is it because of her? He nodded toward Mia, and I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Are you going through some kind of crisis? Because if you are, I can help you. I can get you the treatment you need. The only crisis I had was staying married to you for. As long as I did. I stepped closer to Mia, drawing strength from her presence. I'm not sick, Thomas. I'm not confused. I'm finally living my life the way I want to live it. With a disgraced veterinarian who was fired for having inappropriate relationships with colleagues. His voice was getting louder, more aggressive. Do you have any idea what kind of reputation that gives you? What people are saying about this place? I wasn't fired, Mia said quietly, but I could hear the hurt in her voice. I resigned. After allegations of professional misconduct. After your personal life became such a disaster that you couldn't function in a professional environment. Thomas smiled, and it was predatory. I've done my homework, Dr. Salazar. I know exactly what kind of person you are. Get out. The words came out low and fierce, surprising even me with their intensity. Get out of my sanctuary, off my property, and out of my life. I'm not going anywhere until we've had a proper conversation. You owe me that much after the way you disappeared in the middle of the night like a coward. I don't owe you anything. You owe me an explanation. You owe me the courtesy of a real conversation about our marriage instead of running away at the first sign of difficulty. Difficulty? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call it when you monitoring my phone calls? Isolating me from my friends, making me account for every minute of my day? When you convinced me that I was too stupid, too emotional, too broken to make decisions for myself? I was protecting you. You were controlling me. There's a difference, and I'm finally smart enough to see it. Thomas's facade cracked, revealing the anger underneath. You think you're better than me now? You think this little fantasy you're living is sustainable? You're running a failing animal rescue with a woman who can't even maintain professional boundaries. How long do you think this is going to last? Longer than our marriage did, I said, surprised by my own courage. We'll see about that. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Enjoy your experiment, Natalie. When it falls apart, and it will, I'll be here to help you pick up the pieces. The silence after he left was deafening. I stood in the middle of the reception area, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and residual fear. Mia approached cautiously, her hands raised as if she were trying to calm a spooked animal. Are you okay? She asked softly. I don't know. I sank into one of the waiting room chairs, my legs suddenly unable to support me. I knew he'd find me eventually. I just hoped I'd have more time to prepare. Who is he, really? Beyond being your ex-husband? I took a shuddering breath. He's a prosecutor, well-connected, well-respected, very good at making people believe what he wants them to believe. He's also manipulative, controlling, and has a talent for making me doubt my own reality. The things he said about me are lies designed to make you doubt yourself. That's what he does. He finds people's vulnerabilities and exploits them. I looked up at her, seeing the uncertainty in her expression. What really happened at your last job, Mia? Not his version, the truth. She sat down beside me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I was working at a veterinary hospital in Miami. There was another vet there, someone I'd been friends with for years. We started dating, and I thought it was serious. It wasn't until months later that I found out she was married, that she'd been using me as an escape from her real life. That's not professional misconduct. That's just being human. When her husband found out, he made it his mission to destroy my reputation. He filed complaints with the state board, started rumors about inappropriate relationships with clients' pets, made it impossible for me to work there. I resigned before things got worse, but the damage was done. So you came here to start over. I came here to hide, she corrected. I was tired of fighting, tired of defending myself against accusations that had no basis in reality. I thought, if I could just disappear for a while, work somewhere small and quiet, maybe I could rebuild my life. And instead you found me. She smiled, but it was sad. And instead I found you. And now your ex-husband is going to try to destroy both of us. He can try, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice, but I'm not the same person I was when I was married to him. I'm not going to let him make me disappear again. Are you sure? Because if being with me is going to make your life harder, don't. I reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Thomas doesn't get to dictate who I love or how I live my life. Not anymore. Who you love. She repeated softly. The word had slipped out without permission, but I found I didn't want to take it back. Yes, I love you, Mia. I love the way you see straight through to the heart of things. The way you make me feel like I'm capable of anything. I love your dedication to healing, your gentleness with injured animals, your terrible jokes that make me laugh anyway. I love you too, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Which is why I'm scared about what he might do to hurt you. Whatever he does, we'll face it together. That's what love is supposed to be, right? Not two people trying to survive each other, but two people choosing to build something better than either could create alone. She leaned over and kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. Together, she agreed. But even as we held each other, I could feel the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Thomas had never been one to accept defeat gracefully, and I knew that his visit was just the beginning of a much larger battle. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later when Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the head of the state veterinary board, called Mia's phone at 6 in the morning. "Dr. Salazar, I need you to come in for a meeting today. We've received some concerning allegations about your conduct at the sanctuary." I watched Mia's face go pale as she listened to the details. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that she was engaging in inappropriate relationships with clients, that she was using her position to prey on vulnerable women seeking veterinary services. The evidence, according to Dr. Hendricks, was substantial and required immediate investigation. "It's him," Mia said after she hung up. "It has to be. This is exactly what happened in Miami. What kind of evidence could he possibly have? I don't know, but if he's as well connected as you say, he probably has access to people who can create whatever evidence he needs." The meeting was a nightmare. Dr. Hendricks was professional but clearly concerned, and the allegations were detailed and specific. According to the complaint, Mia had been engaging in sexual relationships with multiple clients, using her veterinary expertise to gain access to vulnerable women who were emotionally invested in their pets' care. The complainant has provided photos, recorded conversations, and witness statements, Dr. Hendricks explained. "I am required to suspend your license pending a full investigation. I've never engaged in inappropriate relationships with clients," Mia said firmly. "I've been in exactly one relationship since I started working at the sanctuary, and it's with the facility director, not a client. Miss Chen, as the director of the sanctuary, you're technically Dr. Salazar's employer. That creates its own set of ethical concerns." I felt my stomach drop. "Are you saying that our relationship is grounds for disciplinary action?" "I'm saying that the optics are concerning, especially given Dr. Salazar's history in Miami. The board will need to investigate whether there's been any quid pro quo, arrangement favorable treatment in exchange for sexual favors, that sort of thing." "That's ridiculous," I said, my voice rising. "Mia is the most ethical person I know. She would never. I understand your loyalty to Dr. Salazar, but you're not in a position to be objective about this situation. The board will need to interview you separately, and I'd strongly recommend that you seek legal counsel." We left the meeting in stunned silence. The suspension was effective immediately, which meant that Maya couldn't treat any animals at the sanctuary until the investigation was complete. For a facility that relied on her expertise to save lives, it was a devastating blow. "How long do these investigations usually take?" I asked as we sat in my car in the parking lot. "Months, sometimes years." Mia stared out the window, her expression hollow. "And even if they find no evidence of wrongdoing, the damage to my reputation will be permanent. Who's going to hire a veterinarian who has been investigated twice for the same allegations? We'll fight this. We'll hire lawyers. We'll demand to see the evidence. Well, Natalie, stop." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I've been down this road before. I know how it ends. This isn't Miami. This is different, is it? Or is it just another powerful man using the system to destroy women who don't fit his definition of acceptable behavior?" I wanted to argue, to insist that justice would prevail, that the truth would be enough to protect us. But deep down, I knew she was right. Thomas had resources, connections, and a talent for making people believe his version of events. We had love and truth and good intentions, which felt woefully inadequate against his carefully orchestrated campaign of destruction. The next week brought a series of new attacks. The local newspaper ran a story about the controversial veterinarian working at the sanctuary, complete with fake allegations and unnamed sources. The sanctuary's funding was suddenly under review by the county commission. 3 of our volunteers quit, citing concerns about the facility's professional standards. He was being very thorough, I said as I read the latest article over morning coffee. Credit where credit's due, he's covering all the bases. How are you so calm about this? Mia asked. She'd been staying at my apartment since the suspension, partly for emotional support and partly because we both received some disturbing, anonymous messages that suggested it wasn't safe for her to be alone. I'm not calm, I'm furious. But I'm also learning that there's a difference between being angry and being defeated. I set down the newspaper and looked at her seriously. I spent 5 years letting Thomas make me feel powerless. I'm not going to do that again. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that he's made a mistake. He's so focused on destroying you that he's forgotten that I know all his secrets. Every dirty trick, every professional shortcut, every time he's bent the rules to get what he wants. Natalie, you can't. I can and I will. He wants to play games? Fine. But he's about to learn that I'm not the same frightened woman who ran away in the middle of the night. I'm done being afraid. I spent the next 3 days going through every document, every email, every piece of correspondence from my marriage. Thomas had been meticulous about his career, but he'd also been careless about covering his tracks at home. I found evidence of case tampering, witness intimidation, and prosecutorial misconduct that went back years. You could go to prison for stealing these documents, Mia said as she watched me organize my findings. They're not stolen. They're community property from my marriage. I have every right to them. I looked up at her, seeing the concern in her expression. I know you're worried about me, but this is the only way to stop him. If we don't fight back, he'll just keep coming after us until there's nothing left. And if we do fight back, then at least we'll go down swinging. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Thomas showed up at the sanctuary on a Friday afternoon, his usual confident smile replaced by something harder and more dangerous. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the reception area. I don't think we do. I stayed by the door, ready to run if necessary. You've been busy, haven't you? Digging through old files, making phone calls to people who don't appreciate being disturbed. He turned to face me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. I know what you think you've found, but you need to understand. Something. I've been playing this game a lot longer than you have. What game is that? The one where you destroy people's lives for sport? The game where I protect my reputation and my career from people who think they can threaten me? He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to back away. You're out of your depth, Natalie. You always were. That's why you needed me to take care of you, to make decisions for you, to keep you from making mistakes that could ruin both our lives. The only mistake I made was staying married to you for as long as I did. Is that what you think? That you can just walk away from 5 years of marriage, start playing house with your girlfriend, and there won't be consequences? What do you want, Thomas? I want you to stop this amateur investigation and convince your girlfriend to accept the board's findings quietly. No appeals, no legal challenges, no media attention. She disappears, and you go back to running your little animal rescue without any more drama. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure that both of you lose everything. Your sanctuary will be shut down for health code violations. Your girlfriend will be facing criminal charges for fraud and sexual misconduct. And you'll be facing charges for harassment and stalking. He smiled, and it was utterly without warmth. I've been building a case against both of you for weeks. One phone call, and it all goes away. Another phone call, and it all comes crashing down. You're bluffing, am I? He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of images of Mia and me together, manipulated to look far more intimate than they actually were. These will be in tomorrow's paper if you don't make the right choice. I stared at the photos, feeling a familiar wave of helplessness wash over me. This was exactly what he'd done during our marriage, presented me with impossible choices, then blamed me for the consequences when I inevitably chose wrong. But this time was different. This time I wasn't alone. You know what, Thomas? You're right, I am out of my depth. I pulled out my own phone and pressed a button, which is why I've been recording this entire conversation. His face went white. You can't. I can, and I did. And I've also been very busy talking to some of your former colleagues, some of the defense attorneys whose cases you've prosecuted, some of the victims whose lives you've destroyed in pursuit of your precious career. I stepped closer, drawing strength from his obvious shock. Turns out a lot of people have been waiting for someone to finally stand up to you. No one will believe you. No one will care about the word of a bitter ex-wife and her delusional girlfriend. Maybe not. But they'll care about the evidence, the witness statements, the pattern of behavior that goes back years. I smiled, and I knew it was just as cold as his had been. You've taught me well, Thomas. You taught me that the person with the best story wins, and I've got a really good story. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I'm making is taking too long to call the police. As if summoned by my words, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance, growing closer. Thomas's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. You called the cops? I called the FBI. Turns out, prosecutorial misconduct is a federal crime, and they're very interested in talking to you about your creative approach to justice. I moved toward the door, no longer afraid. Oh, and Thomas? About those photos you're so proud of, they're going to be evidence in your trial. I hope they were worth it. The next few hours were a blur of statements and questions and legal proceedings that I didn't fully understand. But when the dust settled, Thomas was in federal custody, facing charges that would likely end his career and put him in prison for a very long time. How did you know to call the FBI? Mia asked as we sat in the sanctuary's break room, sharing a bottle of wine and trying to process what had just happened. I didn't nod at first, but when I started looking into his cases, I realized that he'd been using his position to target specific defense attorneys, specific types of cases. It wasn't just about winning, it was about advancing a particular agenda. That's when I knew it was bigger than just personal vindictiveness. And the recording? I started recording all our conversations the day after he showed up here. I learned that trick from my grandmother's letters, actually. She used to document everything, just in case she needed proof of what really happened. Your grandmother was a smart woman. She was. And she would have been proud of what we did. Today, I reached for Mia's hand, marveling at how normal it felt to intertwine our fingers. It's over, isn't it? Really over? The investigation into me will probably be dropped now that they know the complaints were fabricated. But yes, I think it's really over. She squeezed my hand. We did it, Natalie. We actually did it. We survived him, I corrected. But more than that, we found each other. And we learned that love doesn't have to be a battlefield. The months that followed were a revelation in the truest sense of the word. With Thomas's threats neutralized and the investigation into Mia dropped, we were finally free to exist without looking over our shoulders. The sanctuary flourished under our joint leadership, and we developed a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. Mia's reputation was not only restored, but enhanced by the media coverage of Thomas's arrest. The story of how we'd exposed a corrupt prosecutor while defending our relationship became a symbol of justice prevailing over abuse of power. Donations poured in from around the country, and we were able to expand our facilities and hire additional staff. I never thought I'd be grateful for being investigated, Mia said one morning as we reviewed applications for a new marine biologist position. But if it hadn't happened, we might never have discovered what Thomas was really doing. Everything happens for a reason, I replied, then laughed at my own words. Listen to me, sounding like a greeting card. A year ago, I would have been horrified at such optimism. A year ago, you were a different person. We both were. She was right. The woman who had fled her marriage in the middle of the night bore little resemblance to the confident director of a thriving sanctuary. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to speak up for myself, to take up space in my own life without apologizing for it. One evening in late spring, as we were closing up the sanctuary for the night, I found myself drawn to the treatment pool where Luna had once recovered. A new manatee, a young male we'd named Apollo, was resting peacefully in the shallow water, his injuries healing nicely under Mia's expert care. He's going to be ready for release soon, Mia said, joining me at the pool's edge. It never gets old, does it? Watching them heal, knowing we played a part in giving them a second chance. Is that what you think we did? Gave each other a second chance? I considered the question seriously. I think we gave each other permission to have a first chance. A real chance with someone who sees us as we actually are instead of who they want us to be. I love who you actually are, she said softly. The woman who talks to manatees like they're old friends, who can calm a frightened animal with just her presence, who had the courage to stand up to a man who spent years making her feel powerless. I love who I am when I'm with you, I admitted. And I love who you are when you think no one's watching, the way you hum while you work, the way you celebrate every small victory like it's a miracle, the way you look at me like I'm the most fascinating person in the world. You are the most fascinating person in my world. That night, I made a decision that had been building in my heart for weeks. I retrieved Eleanor's letters from the cedar chest in my bedroom, the ones I'd been afraid to read completely, afraid to understand fully. With Mia beside me, I finally opened them all. The love story that emerged was both heartbreaking and beautiful. Eleanor and her beloved Margaret had met in college, had fallen deeply in love, and had maintained their connection through decades of forced separation. They'd written to each other through Eleanor's marriage, through Margaret's career as a traveling nurse, through all the years when society demanded they love in shadows. Listen to this, I said, reading from one of the final letters in the collection. My dearest Them, I know we've spent our lives believing that our love was something to be hidden, something shameful that had to exist in the margins of our real lives, but I'm writing to tell you that you are my real life. You always have been. If I had it to do over again, I would choose you openly, proudly, without apology. I would choose love over fear, truth over safety, us over them. I hope that somewhere, somehow, there are women like us who get to make that choice. I hope they're brave enough to choose love. Mia was quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of Eleanor's words. She was writing to us, she said finally. Not just to Margaret, but to all the women who would come after her. She was giving us permission to be brave. I want to be brave, I said. I want to choose love over fear, truth over safety, us over them. What does that look like to you? I took a deep breath, feeling the rightness of the decision settle into my bones. It looks like a wedding. Not hiding, not apologizing, not asking permission. Just two people who love each other, making a public commitment to build a life together. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Are you proposing to me? I'm proposing that we stop living our love story in the margins. I'm proposing that we write our own ending, the one Eleanor and Margaret never got to have. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, absolutely yes. 1 year later, we stood under a canopy of orchids in the sanctuary's main courtyard, surrounded by friends, family, and colleagues who had become our chosen family. The ceremony was small but perfect, a celebration of love that had survived storms and emerged stronger. I wore Eleanor's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit my body but retaining all the delicate lace and pearl details that had made my grandmother feel beautiful on her wedding day. Mia wore a sharp white suit that complemented her natural confidence and made her look like the professional success she'd always been meant to be. Today, we're not just witnessing a marriage, said Dr. Patricia Hendricks, who had volunteered to officiate after the investigation revealed the truth about the false allegations. We're witnessing the triumph of authentic love over fear, of truth over manipulation, of courage over convenience. As we exchanged vows, I felt the presence of everyone who had loved us into this moment, Eleanor and Margaret, whose hidden love had paved the way for our open one. The animals we'd healed together, who had taught us that gentleness could be its own form of strength. The friends and colleagues who had stood by us during the darkest moments of our battle with Thomas. I promised to love you without trying, to change you, I said, my voice carrying across the courtyard with surprising steadiness. I promise to create space for you to be exactly who you are, to support your dreams even when they scare me, to choose us every day, even when the world makes it difficult. I promise to see you as you are, not as I think you should be, Mia replied, her eyes never leaving mine. I promise to trust your strength, to honor your gentleness, to love you loudly enough to make up for all the years you had to love in. Silence. After the ceremony, as we danced to a song that Luna, the manatee, had somehow inspired, a gentle, flowing melody that reminded us of peaceful waters and second chances, I felt a sense of completeness I'd never experienced before. You think Eleanor would be proud? I asked as we swayed together, oblivious to the celebration continuing around us. I think she'd be amazed. Not just by our courage, but by the fact that we get to live openly what she could only dream of. I want to do something for her, for them, for all the women who didn't get to have what we have. What did you have in mind? I pulled back slightly to look at her, an idea forming that felt both revolutionary and inevitable. I want to establish a foundation. The Eleanor and Margaret Foundation for LGBTQ advocacy and support. I want to use some of the money from the sanctuary's recent success to help other women who are trying to escape abusive relationships, who are struggling to live authentically, who need resources and support to build the lives they deserve. That's beautiful, Natalie. But are you sure you're ready for that level of public advocacy? It would mean becoming a very visible representative of the LGBTQ community. I thought about the question seriously. A year ago, the idea of being publicly visible in any way would have terrified me. But now, surrounded by love and support, grounded in a sense of purpose that extended beyond just my own happiness, I felt ready to step into a larger role. I'm ready, I said with conviction. I'm ready to be the woman Eleanor needed to be, the woman you deserve me to be, the woman I was always meant to be. And what woman is that? Someone who doesn't hide, someone who uses her voice to amplify other voices, someone who understands that love, real love, isn't just about the two people in the relationship. It's about creating a world where everyone gets to love openly, safely, authentically. As the evening wound down and our guests began to drift away, Mia and I found ourselves alone in the sanctuary's main building. The animals were settled for the night, and the gentle sounds of their breathing and the soft splash of water created a peaceful soundtrack for our first hours as a married couple. I have something for you, I said, retrieving a small wrapped package from my office. We agreed no gifts, she protested, but she was smiling as she unwrapped it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages blank and waiting. I want us to write our own letters, I explained. Not because we have to love in secret, but because love this powerful deserves to be documented, preserved, celebrated. For posterity, for the women who will come after us, for the couples who are just beginning to discover what it means to love without fear, for Eleanor and Margaret, who taught us that love can survive anything, even time. Mia opened the journal to the first page, where I'd already written the opening lines. To whoever finds this someday, this is the story of how we learned that love doesn't have to be a secret. This is the story of how we chose courage over comfort, truth over safety, each other over everyone else's expectations. This is the story of how we made Eleanor's dream come true. What comes next? Mia asked, pen poised over the page. Whatever we want, I said, taking her hand. That's the beautiful thing about writing your own story. You get to decide how it ends. She began to write, her handwriting flowing across the page with the same confidence she brought to everything else. In her life, the morning after our wedding, we woke up in the same bed where we'd shared our first kiss, where we'd comforted each other through the storm of Thomas's attacks, where we'd made plans for a future that once seemed impossible. But now, with matching rings on our fingers and a foundation to build, and a sanctuary full of animals who needed our care, we weren't just surviving anymore. We were thriving. The woman I married isn't the same woman who fled her abusive marriage in the middle of the night. She's stronger now, more confident, more willing to take up space in her own life. But she's also gentler, more open, more willing to trust that love can be safe. She's become the woman she was always meant to be, and I get to witness that transformation every single day. As for me, I'm no longer the woman who ran from Miami with my reputation in ruins and my heart locked away. I'm someone who has learned that healing isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about creating something new, something better, something that honors both the pain and the joy of being human. Together, we've built something that neither of us could have created alone. Not just a marriage, but a life. Not just a sanctuary for animals, but a sanctuary for each other. Not just a love story, but a legacy. This is how we learned that some secrets aren't meant to stay buried. This is how we learned that love, real love, deserves to live in the light. And this is how we learned that the most beautiful endings are really just the beginning of something even better. As she finished writing, I looked around at the sanctuary we'd built together, the treatment pools where injured animals learned to trust again, the recovery areas where broken wings were mended, the release site where healed creatures returned to their natural homes. It was a place of second chances, of healing, of love made manifest in concrete actions. Do you think we did it? I asked. Do you think we actually created the life we wanted? I think we created something better than anything we could have. Imagined, Mia replied, closing the journal and setting it carefully on the desk. I think we created a love story that would make Eleanor proud. Outside, the Florida night was warm and soft, filled with the sounds of creatures who had found their way home. Inside, two women who had learned to love without fear settled into their first night as a married couple, surrounded by the animals they'd saved and the future they'd built together. The sanctuary was quiet now, peaceful in the way that only comes when everything is exactly as it should be. The manatees floated in their recovery pools, the sea turtles rested in their holding areas, and the birds roosted safely in their aviaries. And in the small apartment above the clinic, two women who had found their way to each other through pain and healing, through fear and courage, through secrets and truth, fell asleep in each other's arms, dreaming of all the love stories yet to be written. Some secrets, after all, aren't meant to stay buried. Some love stories are meant to be told, celebrated, and shared with the world. And sometimes the most beautiful thing about a happy ending is that it's really just the beginning of something even more beautiful.